The staff of the Marchmont Hotel thought they knew exactly what mistake had cost them their jobs. They thought it was that they hadn't recognized him. That the quiet man in the plain gray coat who checked in under the name S. Doyle, who they'd treated like a nobody for 3 days, had turned out to be Sam Delaney, and that if only they'd known, if only someone had spotted the famous face under the baseball cap, they'd have rolled out the red carpet, and none of this would have happened. They were wrong. That wasn't the mistake at all. When Sam Delaney stood up in that ballroom on the final morning and told 200 employees why the front office staff was being let go, the first thing he did was take that excuse away from them. "You think this is about how you treated me," he said. "It isn't. I don't care how you treated me. I could not possibly care less." He let that sit. "This is about how you treated her." And he told them about a woman named Eleanor, and a room number, and an anniversary, and what he had watched them do to a person who could do absolutely nothing for them, while they thought no one important was looking. Because the mistake was never that they failed to recognize a celebrity. The mistake was that they had built a whole hotel on the idea that some people are worth being kind to, and some people aren't. And the man buying the place had spent his entire life on the other side of that math. There is a 110-year-old hotel on Nob Hill in San Francisco called the Marchmont, and this is the story of the 3 quiet days that saved its soul and cost a dozen people their jobs, and why those turned out to be the same thing. To understand what Sam Delaney was really looking for those 3 days, you have to go back 45 years, to when he was nobody, and to what this exact hotel once did for him. Long before the films, before the name, Sam Delaney was a broke 20-year-old who had come to San Francisco with $40 and a suitcase held shut with a belt, chasing an acting career that had so far consisted entirely of rejection. He had needed work, any work, and the Grand Marchmont Hotel on Nob Hill had hired him as a busboy in its dining room. The lowest job in the building, clearing plates for people who looked straight through him. He had been miserable and ashamed and one bad week from giving up. And one night, humiliated after a wealthy diner had snapped his fingers at Sam and called him boy and complained that the help was staring, Sam had gone out to the service entrance to fall apart in private, and a young bellman had found him there. The bellman's name was Cecil. He couldn't have been more than 30 himself, and Cecil had not offered advice or pity. He had simply sat down on the cold step next to a devastated busboy he didn't know and shared his own dinner and said something Sam Delaney would carry for the rest of his life. "Don't let a man who snaps his fingers tell you what you're worth, son. He doesn't know. He can't even see you. But I see you. You're going to be somebody, and when you are, you remember how it felt to be the one nobody looked at. That's the only thing worth keeping from a place like this." That was it. A shared dinner and a few sentences from a young bellman to a broke kid, 45 years ago. Cecil never thought about it again. But Sam Delaney built the rest of his life on it, on the idea that a person is worth something before anybody looks at them, and that the truest measure of a soul is how it treats the people it has no reason to treat well at all. He never forgot the Marchmont. And so, 4.5 decades later, when Sam Delaney, now wealthy, now beloved, heard that the grand old hotel was failing, that a developer was about to buy it for $80 million and gut it into luxury condos and erase it from the earth, he did something quietly enormous. He assembled a group, and he put together the money, and he moved to buy the Marchmont himself, to save the place that had once saved him. But he did not sign the papers first. Because a building is only bricks. What Sam wanted to save was the thing the Marchmont had given him that night on the cold step, the soul of it, the care of it. the ethic of a young bellman who saw a kid nobody else could see. And he needed to know, before he spent $80 million, whether that soul was still in the building or whether it had died somewhere in the decades since. So he checked in as a nobody, plain gray coat, baseball cap, an ordinary name, just another guest. And he watched. What he found, for the first 2 days, broke his heart. The Marchmont he checked into was a beautiful, hollow thing. The lobby still glowed with old chandeliers and marble. But the soul was gone, and it had been replaced by something Sam recognized immediately, because he'd seen it take over 100 institutions in his lifetime, a culture of the transaction. A hotel that had learned to divide every human being who walked through its doors into 2 categories, people who mattered and people who didn't, and to lavish the first with everything and treat the second like an inconvenience to be processed. The man who had built that culture was named Gordon Fisk, and he was the general manager, and, this is important, he was not a monster. Gordon Fisk was a professional. He was, in his own mind, excellent. He had been brought in 8 years earlier to save a failing hotel, and he had done it the way the industry teaches you to do it, by identifying the high-value guests, the whales, the ones who spent, and orienting the entire operation around pleasing them. He tracked it all on dashboards. He had trained his staff, relentlessly, to read a guest's value in 10 seconds and allocate their warmth accordingly. To Gordon Fisk, this wasn't cruelty. It was efficiency. It was survival. It was, he'd have told you sincerely, good business. And so when the quiet man in the gray coat checked in under the name S. Doyle, booking the cheapest room, no status, no spend history, the front desk read him in 10 seconds, a low-value guest, and gave him exactly the warmth that math dictated, which was none. Bored eyes, a rote script, an upsell attempt, and then, when he declined, a subtle cooling, the specific chill of a service person who has decided you're not worth the effort. A young front desk lead named Brandt actually turned away mid-sentence to greet a better-dressed guest behind him, leaving Sam standing there with his keycard half extended. Sam felt all of it. He'd spent 45 years being famous, but he had never once forgotten how it felt to be the busboy nobody looked at. And he could still feel the chill of being written off in 10 seconds. It stung, even now. But it wasn't what he'd come to see. He didn't care how they treated Sam Delaney. He wanted to see how they treated the people who had no Sam Delaney hiding underneath. And on the second day, he found her. Her name was Eleanor Vance, and she was 80 years old, and she came through the doors of the Marchmont the way she had come through them every single year for 55 years. Eleanor and her husband Harold had honeymooned at the Marchmont in 1969. 2 school teachers who'd saved for a year for 3 nights in the grandest hotel they'd ever seen, and who had loved it so much that they'd come back every single year on their anniversary for the rest of Harold's life, the same week, the same room, room 407, with a little view of the bay if you leaned. 54 anniversaries. The Marchmont was the museum of their marriage. Every corner of it held a version of them, younger and younger the further back you looked. Harold had died 14 months ago, and Eleanor Vance had come back anyway, alone for the 55th year, because she was not ready to stop, because coming to the Marchmont was the closest thing left to holding his hand. She could not really afford it anymore, on a widow's fixed income. She had booked the cheapest room they had, and she'd made one request when she booked, one small, enormous request. She'd asked if she might please have room 407, her room, their room. The Marchmont system read Eleanor Vance in 10 seconds, the way it read everyone. Low-value guest. Cheapest room. No meaningful spend. A little old woman who'd be a nuisance and tip nothing, and when she arrived and asked, at the desk hopefully, whether she'd been able to get 407, Brandt, the same young lead, glanced at his screen and said, without looking up, 407's a premium view room, ma'am. That's not what you're booked into. I've got you in a standard on the 3rd floor. That's what the rate covers. And when she tried gently to explain, it's just, my husband and I always. He cut her off, politely, the way they were trained to cut off low-value guests who were becoming a time cost. I understand, but I can't move you into a higher category for the rate you paid. Is there anything else? There was a couple behind her in better clothes. He was already looking past her at them. Eleanor Vance said, No, that's all right. Thank you. And she took her key to a 3rd floor standard room, alone on her 55th anniversary, in the hotel that was the museum of her whole married life. And she did not make a scene, because women of Eleanor's generation do not make scenes. And Sam Delaney stood 10 feet away in his plain gray coat and watched the entire thing and had to put his hand against a marble column to steady himself. Because he had just watched the Marchmont do to Eleanor Vance exactly what a finger-snapping diner had once done to a busboy named Sam. He had watched them decide, in 10 seconds, that she was worth nothing. And she had more love in her than the entire building, and they could not see 1 ounce of it, because they had trained themselves to only see the spend. He almost signed the papers that night and cleaned house. But he waited. Because he had also started to notice something else. He'd started to notice that not everyone at the Marchmont was blind. There was one man who could still see. Cecil was 74 years old now, and he had worked at the Marchmont for 50 years. And he was the last of the old guard, the last person in that building who remembered what the hotel had been before it learned to sort people. He was a doorman now, too old to carry bags, and Gordon Fisk had tried more than once to retire him. Because Cecil didn't fit the dashboards, Cecil wasted time, which is what the metrics call it when a man treats a low-value guest like a human being. Sam had watched Cecil for 2 days without recognizing him. 45 years is a long time, and Sam had been looking for a young bellman's face, not an old doorman's. But he had watched Cecil, this stranger, do the thing the whole rest of the hotel had forgotten how to do. He'd watched Cecil greet every single person who came through the doors, the whales and the nobodies, exactly alike, with the same unhurried warmth, calling them by name if he knew it, learning it if he didn't. He'd watched Cecil, in his plain gray coat, be treated coldly by Cecil the doorman's colleagues, and never once let it curdle him. And on the evening of the 2nd day, Sam watched Cecil find Eleanor Vance sitting alone in the lobby, dressed for a dinner she clearly had no one to go to, turning her wedding ring around and around her finger. And he watched an old doorman quietly change the entire story. Because Cecil remembered her. 50 years of doors, Cecil remembered everyone. He walked over, and he sat down. Actually sat down, the thing Gordon Fisk would have called a firing offense, and he said, "Mrs. Vance, it's your week. I always know it's your week. Where's Harold this year? Parking the car, is he? Taking his sweet time like always?" And Eleanor's face crumpled, and she told him. And Cecil, 74 years old, took the hand of a grieving widow in the lobby of a hotel that had forgotten her. And he grieved with her. And then he did something about it. He couldn't override the room system. He didn't have the authority. And Fisk would have had his head. But Cecil knew things the system didn't. He knew room 407 was empty that night. And he walked Eleanor Vance up to the 4th floor on his own authority, which is to say no authority at all, and he unlocked 407 with his master key. And he let an old woman stand for an hour in the room where her marriage began and look out at the bay the way she and Harold had looked at it for 54 years. And say goodbye to him properly in the only place on earth that still held him. "I'll square it if anyone asks," Cecil told her. "You take all the time you need. Some things aren't on the rate card, Mrs. Vance. Some things a hotel just owes you." Sam Delaney watched all of this from the end of the hall, in his plain gray coat, and he wept. And he understood two things at once. He understood that the soul of the Marchmont was not dead. And he understood that it now lived in exactly one 74-year-old man that the hotel was actively trying to retire. That was the night he decided. Not just to buy the place, but what to do with it once he had. The reveal came the next morning, and it did not go the way anyone expected, least of all the staff who had spent 3 days ignoring the man in the gray coat. Sam had scheduled the ownership announcement for the third morning. 200 staff assembled in the grand ballroom to learn that the Marchmont had been saved from the developers, and to meet the new owner. Gordon Fisk stood at the front, beaming, ready to introduce the mysterious buyer he'd been told would appear. He had no idea it was the low-value guest from room 312. And then Sam Delaney took off the baseball cap and walked up from the back of the room, and the gasp that went through 200 hospitality professionals was the sound of an entire staff realizing, all at once, that the nobody they'd been cold to for 3 days was the man who now owned their livelihoods. The panic was immediate and visible. You could watch it move through them, the frantic mental replay. What did I say to him? Did I upsell him? Did I turn away? Oh, God. Brant, the front desk lead, had gone white. And when Sam reached the front and the room fell into terrified silence, the staff braced for exactly the story they assumed they were in. The humiliation, the mass firing, the rich celebrity's revenge on the little people who'd failed to grovel. Sam looked out at them, and the first thing he did was dismantle that story. "I know what every one of you is thinking right now," he said. And his voice was calm, and there was no cruelty in it at all. "You're thinking about how you treated me these 3 days. You're doing the math. Some of you are terrified because you were cold to me at the desk, or you upsold me, or you looked right past me. And I want to take that fear away from you first, because it's the wrong fear, and it's important that you understand why." He paused. "I do not care how you treated me. I mean that completely. How you treat a man who turns out to own the building is worthless information. Anyone is kind to power. A dog is kind to whoever holds the leash. That tells me nothing about your character, and it is not why any decision is being made today." The room did not understand yet. He went on. "For 3 days, I didn't watch how you treated me. I watched how you treated the people who could do nothing for you. The ones your system flagged as low value. The ones there was no percentage in being kind to." His voice hardened, just slightly. "And I watched this staff take an 80-year-old widow named Eleanor Vance, who has come to this hotel every year for 55 years, who spent her honeymoon here and buried her husband last year and came back alone, because this building is all she has left of him, and I watched you ret her in 10 seconds as a cheap room and a bad tip, and turn her away from the one room that holds her entire marriage, and look past her at a better-dressed couple while she said thank you, and walked away alone on her anniversary." Nobody breathed. "That's the mistake," Sam said. "Not me. Her, and here's the thing I need you to really hear, because it's the whole reason I'm standing here. Recognizing me would not have saved a single one of your jobs. If Brant had spotted my face at the desk and rolled out the red carpet, I'd have fired him faster, because it would have proven the exact disease I came here to find. A staff that switches its humanity on and off based on what it calculates a person is worth. I don't want a staff that's wonderful to movie stars. Any hotel on earth can flatter a movie star. I want a staff that's wonderful to Eleanor Vance. Because that's the only kindness that's real. The kind with nothing in it for you. Gordon Fisk lost his job that morning, and so did the front office leadership that had built and enforced the culture of the 10-second sort. Sam did not pretend otherwise, and he did not dress it up. Some of them had families. It was not a happy thing. He did not enjoy it. And he said so, but he did it. Because a soul cannot be restored to a building while the people who taught it to see human beings as line items are still running the floor. He was not cruel about it, though. That's the part that separated this from a revenge story. He met with Fisk privately after. The framework of a decent man's justice always includes the private room, and he told Fisk the truth, which was gentler than Fisk expected and harder to hear for it. "You're not a bad man, Gordon," Sam said. "That's the tragedy of you. You built exactly the hotel the industry told you to build. You saved this place, by the numbers, and the numbers were the only thing anyone ever asked you to care about. You optimized for the whales because that's what excellence looks like on a dashboard." He shook his head. "But there's a kind of excellence that doesn't show up on any dashboard, and it's the only kind that lasts. And you trained it out of this building, because nobody could measure it. I'm not firing you because you're wicked. I'm firing you because you spent 8 years being unable to see Eleanor Vance, and I can't rebuild what I want to rebuild with a man at the top who was never able to see her. I hope you learn to. I think you can. I'd take a call from you in a year." He meant it. Fisk left with his dignity and a hard, true thing to carry, which is more than most reckonings offer. And then Sam Delaney went to find Cecil. He found the old doorman at his post. Braced for the worst, Cecil assumed the new owner's house cleaning would sweep out the 74-year-old first of all. Instead, Sam Delaney walked up to him and looked at him for a long moment and said, "You don't remember me. There's no reason you would." But 45 years ago, a busboy sat on the service steps out back, ready to quit, ready to go home a failure, and a young bellman named Cecil sat down next to him and shared his dinner, and told him a man who snaps his fingers doesn't get to decide what you're worth. You told him he was going to be somebody. And you told him to remember how it felt to be the one nobody looked at. Cecil's mouth had fallen open. "I remembered, Cecil," Sam said, and his voice broke. "I remembered every day for 45 years. You're the reason I made it. And you're the reason I'm standing here. And you're the reason there's still going to be a Marchmont at all. I didn't buy this hotel to save the building. I bought it to save you. The thing you've been doing at that door for 50 years while everyone told you it was a waste of time. It was never a waste of time. It was the only thing in this whole building that was ever worth anything." And Sam Delaney made a 74-year-old doorman the new head of the Marchmont's guest experience, put the soul of the place back in the hands of the one man who'd never lost it, and told him to teach every single employee how to see the people the dashboards couldn't. Here is what happened after. Eleanor Vance has room 407 for the rest of her life. Sam made it a standing reservation, comped forever. Her anniversary week held every year in her name, whether she books it or not, and Cecil personally walks her up every time. She's 83 now. She still comes. She says it's still the closest thing to holding Harold's hand, except now the whole staff knows her name, and knows Harold's, and asks about him. And a hotel that once looked through her now treats her arrival as the most important booking of the year. Which, in the only accounting that matters, it is. Cecil ran guest experience at the Marchmont for 6 more years, until he finally, genuinely retired at 80. And in those 6 years, he remade the entire culture of the place in the image of a shared dinner on a cold step. He trained every new hire personally. The first thing he taught them was never the room categories or the reservation system. The first thing he taught them was Eleanor's name and her story, and one rule: you will treat the person who can do nothing for you exactly the way you'd treat the one who can do everything. If you can't do that, this isn't the hotel for you. There's a plaque by the front door now, small, brass. It just says, "Some things aren't on the rate card." The young ones who'd stayed kind under the old regime, a front desk clerk named Marisol among them, 24, who'd quietly been sneaking warmth to low-value guests for years against Fisk's culture, rose fast. Marisol runs the front office now. She learned it all from Cecil. Gordon Fisk did call, about a year later. Sam took the call. Fisk had spent the year running a small hotel his own way, and he'd written Sam to say that he finally understood what he hadn't been able to see, and that the year had been the best of his career, and the happiest. Sam told him he'd known he could learn it. Some reckonings do end in redemption, when the person is brave enough to do the work. Fisk's did, and the Marchmont, the beautiful hollow thing Sam had checked into 3 years ago, it isn't hollow anymore. It became, improbably, one of the most beloved hotels in the country. And here is the part that would have driven Gordon Fisk's old dashboards insane. It became more profitable than it had ever been under the culture of the 10-second sort. Because it turned out that when you treat every human being who walks through your doors like they matter, they come back, and they tell people, and they love you. And love, it turns out, is also, in the end, good business. It just can't be the reason you do it. That's the only catch. It only works if you'd have done it anyway. That's the part I keep coming back to. I've told this story a lot of times, and people love the reveal, the gray coat coming off, the staff's faces, the moment the nobody turns out to own everything. And I understand it. It's satisfying. But I want to be careful about the lesson people take from it, because most people take exactly the wrong one. And the wrong one is the whole disease this story is actually about. The wrong lesson is, be nice to everyone, because you never know who might turn out to be important. Be kind to the man in the gray coat, because he might own the building. Treat the nobody well, just in case the nobody is a somebody. People hear this story and they think it's a lesson about the risk of guessing wrong, that the shabby guest might be a millionaire. So hedge your bets and be polite to all of them. And that lesson is poison. That lesson is the exact thing Gordon Fisk believed. It's still the 10-second sort. It's just a more cautious version of it. It's still kindness as a calculation, warmth as an investment, decency as insurance against the chance that a nobody is secretly a somebody. And Sam Delaney fired an entire management team specifically to kill that idea. Because a kindness you only extend in case it pays off was never kindness at all. It was accounting. The real lesson is harder, and it's the one the staff learned at the cost of their jobs. It's this: the measure of you is not how you treat the people who can do something for you. Everyone, the cruelest, most transactional person alive, is decent to power. That behavior tells you nothing. The measure of you is how you treat the people who can do absolutely nothing for you. The widow with the cheap room. The busboy nobody looks at. The guest who will never review you, never tip you, never own your building, never be anything but a person who needed to be treated like a person. How you treat them, when there is nothing in it for you and no one important is watching, That's not a piece of your character. That is your character. The rest is a performance. Eleanor Vance couldn't do anything for anyone at that hotel. That's exactly why how they treated her was the only true thing the whole building had to say about itself. So here's what I'll leave you with. Somewhere today, you're going to encounter a person who can do nothing for you, who can't advance you, or reward you, or ever pay you back. A tired clerk, a slow old man, a widow at a desk. And the way you treat that person, when there's no percentage in it at all, that's the realest thing about you that exists. Not the way you treat your boss. The way you treat the one who can't be your boss. Be kind to the one who can do nothing for you. That's the whole test. It always was. This story is a work of fiction. Sam Delaney, Cecil, Eleanor and Harold Vance, Gordon Fisk, Brant, Marisol, and the Marchmont Hotel were created for this narration. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is coincidental. If someone once treated you with real kindness at a moment when you could do nothing for them, a stranger, a clerk, a doorman, anyone who had no reason to be good to you, and was anyway, tell me about them in the comments. Say what they did. Those are the only people this channel has ever really been about. And if you've ever been the Eleanor at the desk, invisible, grieving, treated like a line item, I hope this reached you. Somebody sees you. There are more Cecils in the world than the front desk lets you believe. If you want more stories told this way, slowly, and with respect for everyone in them, subscribe, and I'll have the next one ready for you. Take care of each other, especially the ones who can't do a thing for you. I'll see you in the next one.